OPEC Plus has agreed to increase output, or rather agreed to increase outputs by about 648,000 barrels per day in July and August, as they fully unwound nearly 10 million barrels per day of cuts implemented in May 2020 to counter the COVID-19 pandemic. Between this decision and Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the international crude market has rolled with the waves. But ahead of the group's next meeting on September the 5th, comments from Saudi Arabia's oil minister, Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman, have been bringing up some issues. He pointed to a disconnect between the paper and physical oil markets, saying that OPEC Plus has the flexibility and commitment to cut crude output levels if needed in response to the price disconnect. Desmond Aboifo, energy expert and director of Decitone Energy, joins me from Abuja, Nigeria. Desmond, let's look straight at what the Saudi minister's comments basically have done. They've reverberated around the world and around crude markets. This paper and physical market disconnect has come up before. So what exactly is the issue?
Thank you very much, and thank you so much for having me once again on the station. Yes, very clearly, we've seen a huge disconnect between the paper and the physical market, of course, as opined even by the Nigerian state Minister of State of Petroleum Resources, and also comments around the issues coming from the Saudi Arabian major CEO. The key issue we see here, of course, is the imbalance or the gross imbalance between the supplies and the demand. And just a bit of some statistics here, we've seen that in the last month, oil prices has been fairly stable, but of course, output has grown to just about 490,000 barrels per day, and that's up from about 42 million barrels per day. And of course, we're also experiencing a bit of a shortfall from OPEC plus target that has been thrown down to just under 3 million barrels per day. So we see that paper disconnect between OPEC plus ambitions and of course what the market also dictates at the moment. So this calls for some kind of serious concern from the energy players.
So for those who may not understand, what exactly is this paper and this physical disconnect? Are we talking about in terms of what crude production should be per each of the OPEC plus members versus what it actually is and what they're sending to the market? Or what exactly is it?
Right. So the key issue around the disconnect is what was planned to be the member countries' output versus what was planned from OPEC's headquarters in Vienna. I mean, we've seen that every month they sit down in the meetings and look at how far they are from targets, and we've seen that there's a clear disconnect. Most countries, I mean, from African perspective, Nigeria inclusive, has struggled to meet up with the OPEC targets. And what that really means in the market is if we see that drop in plant productions, of course, we see that also has bite on the global prices. And the role of OPEC Plus is really to stabilize these prices from a fiscal point of view, and among all the 80% of all the oil producing markets of the world, which is OPEC member countries, we've seen that the key players, which is Saudi Arabia and some of the Middle East countries, are quite having a field deal, to say the least, in this point in time, because we see that there's a bit of struggle from other countries that are not meeting up with the targets. But yes, so the key connection is that there seem to be some discrepancies within what is planned for as production versus what is being set as a goal for them to produce.
All right, so let's further look at Prince Salman's comments. And it seems that he's been supported by other crude producers like Nigeria, as you've mentioned, Venezuela, Azerbaijan, Congo, Libya, the UAE, Sudan, Iraq, Algeria, Pakistan, and even Equatorial Guinea. So if you have so many of those who are involved in oil production and OPEC Plus being apparently behind what Saudi Arabia's oil minister is saying, what then can OPEC Plus do about it? Is that us seeing a push maybe towards a slight difference or a slight change come this September 5th meeting?
Yes, absolutely. We see the issue around the OPEC Plus again as a critical enabler, and if you like, they're like a cog even in the system. One of the issues that hits the industry so hard, it's even looking at the numbers, it's very clear that the June levels, we've seen that we've fallen even more than 25% from June levels right now. And of course, we're also looking at the impact of the Iranian deal coming to the market, and that has also pushed the prince's comments on trying to make a report around what the prices would look like. And we've seen that the price is even sinking a bit lesser in the coming weeks, so just about $96 a barrel.
All right. So before we get to the Iran deal, because that's a very important part, as you mentioned, many African producers like Nigeria have been struggling to meet their production quotas. And there are conversations around possibly reducing what needs to go out. So would a supply cut even have the desired impact at this time? An official one at this point, because again, countries are not meeting their quota.
Absolutely. I mean, we see that, most of the key African producers are struggling to meet up with your quotas, and that's understandable because each country has got its own very distinct issues around their production targets. A case in point with the Nigerian oil and gas industry that is being saddled with issues around theft and vandalism and things like that. But the overriding goal for why countries would not be able to meet up with their targets, of course, is a bit more digging deep into what causes those drivers. From the nation's point of view, because from OPEC's point of view, these targets are set, and when they are set, countries need to adhere to them so that they can be able to balance off the trade-off between the oil demand and oil supply in the market.
So let's look at the wider implications. We might be seeing a cut with OPEC producers and the cuts in the production quota, but right now there's runaway inflation around the world, and the rising oil price has been one of the factors affecting that. So if there was a cut, what do you think the wider global implications would be at this point in time?
Obviously, I mean, when we see a cut in production, that will also have a knock-on effect in the market today, because of course, when the demand soar up, of course, that also increases the price. And then when the supply is just higher than normal, we see that price even dropping. So the implications of having a supply cut will be possibly inflation in the countries. We've seen that countries right now are struggling with the two-digit inflation numbers, even from the Nigerian point of view. Yeah. And other African countries around the space. We see that unprecedented inflations in the lifestyle of nationals, and that also bites hard into the economy that they are trying to live on. We also see the impact on the financial structure of companies trying to live up of debts to be able to keep up with their recurring expenditures, because of course we see that impact bite into the economy's wallet on a long term. But while we don't expect prices to be a bit too high in the next few years, we also expect that OPEC Plus meeting coming up sometime next month to be able to create that sort of balance across the OPEC Plus member countries, inclusive of Russia.
Okay, inclusive of Russia. So let's talk about Iran and the West. Over the years, we've heard the possibility of deals, but this one seems to be just a bit more firm than many times we've heard of it. And it would likely crash further pricing even further down if a deal is signed. So how likely is a deal this time round? How far off do you think a deal is between the West and Iran?
Well, the discourse around the Iranian nuclear deal and of course with the West, it's something that it's an ongoing discussion. It's been on and off in the news lately. And of course, the key impact is that it will destabilize global oil prices, to say the least, because it throws some bit of volatility within the crude oil futures. And of course, a lot of policymakers has come with varying perspective, but the key underlying factor is that it would impact significantly on the regional geopolitical influences on how they operate.
All right, finally, Desmond, you did mention the September 5 meeting of OPEC Plus, all things holding equal. You said that we should expect some kind of deal that will throw a little bit of stability, even including Russia. What else do you think might come out of that meeting?
Well, I think the discourse around the variances of what was planned versus what is the reality will be on some of the front burner issues. OPEC Plus has set an ambitious target to be able to regularize key member countries that forms around 80% of the global productions per day. And we see that particular discourse around trying to keep up with targets. And of course, while as much as most countries in Africa would struggle to keep up with the target over the long term, we also expect that the nations will be able to have a fair discussion to ensure that they keep the prices at almost at par to what they are currently producing, just to keep it safe.
All right, keep it safe. We still have a few days before that OPEC meeting, but a lot of people will have their eyes on it just like we will. Desmond Agwefo, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much and have a good day.
Same to you. September 5th is the day, and whatever comes out, whatever the recommendations, advice, and the decisions are, you can trust that we will have all the updates for you right here on Business Edge. Now, we'll get into Crypto Watch just after this. The phrase I want you to hold on to: non-fungible tokens. I'll explain. Just stay with us.